Craig, how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Busy times, busy day, eh?
Busy times. Just getting back from Albany.
They're keeping you busy.
Yeah, politics is not a slow time for anything.
Let's start with Albany.
All right.
What did you think? Ironically, two things, right? State of the state.
Yep.
A lot of pocketbook, bread and butter issues.
Yep.
Secondly, big fundraising numbers.
Yep. Yeah, I mean the big thing with the state of the state for Governor Hochul is, this seemingly is her kickoff to her re-election campaign. She's taken this time to not look like she's politicking next year with the state of the state. She's put out a lot of initiatives that are going to kind of move I think I even heard Brian Lair talk about this morning that if you wouldn't have known that she's a Democrat, adding more police, involuntary commitments, tax breaks, all these things that are really appeasing to the center or to the right of the people in the state and how they lean. At the same time, she still has the Democratic values, talking about child care and all these other Democratic values that she has. But it was much different. There was a lead up to the show. There was a marching band. There was a whole song and dance beforehand. I can't remember the last time I saw that, but it was an event. It was at the Egg. It wasn't in the assembly chambers. It was a big extravagant event.
Craig, I would say based on the speech yesterday and the mayor's announcement today, that for better or worse, the big winners are people and communities and people that treat people that suffer from mental health.
Yeah.
It's become a topic. It's become an election topic. Hopefully this leads to more services, long-term care, beds.
Yeah.
And it's going to be controversial, right? Because some people oppose the sort of civil rights and the involuntary commitment.
I would say yes and no. I mean, listen, you come back to 2019, you talk to cops before the defund movement, you say, what do you want to do? We don't want to go to emotionally disturbed calls. We don't want to have to deal with the homelessness. We don't have to deal with these things because when you put mental health into the equation with that, it is counterintuitive to what the general philosophy is for policing, which is end a situation as quickly as possible. There's less amount of violence or less amount of damage to people there or around them, right? So it doesn't really make sense with somebody going through a mental break. Now, we're still trying to bridge that gap. We've defunded social services for the last better part of 2 decades, even more than that. We've asked cops to step in. Now we're trying to do these things, moving through involuntary commitments and voluntary removals. The question is always going to be who is doing it? Who is out there in the field? Who are these nurses? Do we have enough psychiatric RN nurses? Because last time I checked, I thought there was a nurse shortage in the country, and especially with doctors, all these different things. I know the Adams administration had been pushing, which I live in New Jersey. We have a lot more people that can do involuntary commitments. You can be a therapist, an LCSW, all the acronyms different per state. So therapists, social workers with a specialized training, basically a graduate degree with some post-education, not a full doctorate. So it would be similar to a psychiatric nurse RN, but not just specifically a nurse, right? So that's the first part, is how is that going to work? How are we going to hire them? We had trouble hiring them in 2019 when Dermot Shea, I think it was 2019, 2020, when he started his Be Heard program. We couldn't find enough nurses to do this. So that was a problem 5 years ago. So everything that's old is new again. And then the question is also going to be supportive housing. I mean, a lot of the people that we have that we're talking about here, that we're going in, we're seeing on the subways, we're seeing all these things, like, yes, it takes 100 touches to get them to get care, and it's more likely that they're going to stay into care. But then once they go into a psychiatric ward, what is the step-down program for them? It can't just be Kendra's Law or you're going to live with family or nothing. So that's where they have to have much more of an investment, and they're talking about it. It's just, what is the execution? Yeah. We have a mayor in potentially his last year in office, and we have a governor in potentially the last 2 years in office. So does that ball get dropped again with a changing of the guard if that does happen?
But it's the policy question of the day. Lander, who's running,
right,
announces his plan.
Right.
Then folks that want to pile on former Governor Cuomo are blaming him, right, for cutting.
Right.
So it seems to be that is the latest policy issue that's going to drive a lot of the debate and the discussions coming up to this mayoral election.
Completely agreed. And I think it's something that everybody's talked about. The mayor's been pushing for multiple years, and this is the first good movement he's gotten on it. So that was a victory and a feather in his cap. But the thing with these things is they do take a while. There's the measurables on this are not. It's not good politicking. It's not a good. Yes, right now it's going to be a good speech, but then 2 years down the line, when you have to set these milestones, it's not something that changes overnight.
But
it's something that
Craig,
changes
but
5
Craig,
years.
let's be honest. If you have a primary in June, you want to have a substance
I'm not
policy announcement. Whether that moves the needle a lot, that's part of this. That's part of this business.
I disagree with that at all. I'm just looking at my political reporting of I need to make sure check in 2 years to figure out where what promises they're going to be making, because I think there's going to be a lot of big promises made, and we have to see what is a realistic where they're going to be in 2 to 5 years.
Craig, what did you make of the poll, the most recent poll that showed former Governor Cuomo at 32%, and this is what I don't know, and I'm not a pollster.
Yeah,
but I find it hard to believe that that a sitting incumbent mayor is polling at the same number as Zoran Mamdani, which begs the question, right? Was it accurate? I don't know. I'm asking you. Is it an accurate poll? I mean, the mayor of the city of New York. That's crazy.
So here's the thing. Here's a caveat with this. To start off, is I haven't seen the full poll. I've seen snippets of the poll.
Yeah, in all fairness, I've only saw those numbers that were put out.
No, but I've seen
the Twitter sphere.
No, but I've seen the printout of that. The real physical poll of that, and then another snippet of explaining who they polled. My spidey sense as a reporter goes off and says, well, why haven't you given me the full thing? That always kind of leads me to believe that maybe there's something that it isn't as accurate. I don't know how they asked the question. My first question was, how do you get 32% of favorability, but in your first round when you're doing ranked choice voting in the first of 5, you get 39%? How did you ask that 32% question? How are you asking that 39% question? What is the straight question? And polling goes down to is how you phrase a question, right? You can get anybody to say yes to something if you ask in a specific way. And I'm not saying that this was a cooked up poll. Obviously people are telling me that because they have interests in making that argument. I've heard there's internal polling that makes it a 2-man race. I've had other polling between Cuomo and Adams, but I also have other polling that I'm looking at right now that's kind of similar to that. And I have another poll that I'm looking at that's slightly similar to that. However, we have to look at all the crosstabs, we have to look at who was actually polled, and we have to remember at the end of the day, polling is not an exact science. As we've known in the last 3 presidential elections, that polling doesn't always represent the full scope of the New York voter base.
Craig, do you, if you were a betting man, you say former Governor Cuomo runs?
I would say if I'm a betting man, I would believe all indications are pointing to that he's running at this point, that he's going to run, barring any thing. But, I think we have to also take a look at, the spotlight hasn't really been on him. He's got all the benefit of being in the race without actually being in the race, with none of the negatives. And with these crosstabs, and the important thing about talking about when you're talking about that is, what is the unfavorability? Because the last poll we saw the full breakdown, his unfavorability and his favorability were even. And I would argue, and this is conversations I've had with a lot of political pundits and everything like that, and pollsters, is that people have their minds made up on Cuomo. Now, we're in January. This is name recognition polls at this point. So how much does this really matter?
Question now. What is the Trump inauguration matters?
Yeah. I think
I've heard from multiple people that is when things really will begin.
Yeah, I was listening to WNYC.
What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on what it means? What does it mean for the New York City mayoral race, the inauguration, pre or post?
I think just more attention will be aimed at the New York City primary, opposed to the LA fires, Biden leaving office, Trump coming into office, the nomination hearings, all of the things that are happening around us, the state of the state, state of the city. I think once we get to the end of January into February and people are out there now, like today we're getting the campaign numbers. It's Wednesday. We're getting all the latest filing numbers. This is when it's going to start heating up. This is when we're going to start seeing, Lander is now officially in the race. He's accepted matching funds. I think there was a lot of speculation that he missed his filing last month in December because that would leave him the ability to then jump down into the comptroller race. And because if you don't accept, for those who don't understand, if you don't accept matching funds, then you can shift races. You can only move up in races with money like that. You cannot then move down because it's scaled in a different way of how much money is matched and how much you can actually fundraise.
What are people on the lookout for? Post-Trump inauguration?
Post-Trump inauguration, it's going to be interesting how the dynamic happens between, I think for the everyday New Yorker, what is that dynamic between Hochul and Adams and Trump? And both so far have signaled a much warmer embrace of the second Trump administration than the first Trump administration than under Governor Cuomo and Bill de Blasio, where it was a obstruction, it was a fight Trump movement. And I think my understanding for what I talk to people, and it seems like there's less of a left pendulum swing, right? As the first time there was outrage, there was protests in the streets. The next election was everything was a blue wave. It doesn't seem the same as last time.
Do you think this whole thing that went out with the mayor and Bruce Blakeman, do you think it's just a whole lot of sensational gossip, or do you think there was real meaning? What's your analysis of it? Because a lot of it is, it's like, it could be just, it is a random conversation.
It's a random conversation.
Like a nothing burger.
It's a random conversation. They're talking about gangs. I know gangs have been an issue in Nassau. Notably, though, this is the first time they've sat down. Also notable that Bruce Blakeman is a surrogate of Donald Trump and has a line to him. However, his office, Adams' office, adamantly denies that anything was talked about Trump or a pardon. And you have to take that for what it is at this point. They met for 2 hours. It would not be strange under other circumstances. We have to point it out and we have to raise questions about it. They're denying it. We don't have any I don't have any reporting to the contrary at this point. It's just mere speculation. However, we should be noting these things, right?
Correct.
This is the difference of the embrace, the warmer embrace of a Trump administration, and it could be part of that too, right? I mean, there could have been other conversations.
Yeah, but it could have happened in the governor's state of the state too. I mean, right? I mean,
well, Blakeman wasn't up there.
Oh, that's true. Bruce, just saying conceivably.
It conceivably
right?
could
There
have happened.
are people of all parties and all stripes at those things, right? So there could have been an interaction there, right? I think.
Yeah, there's not as I'd probably being up in Albany. It was my first time up there. I did not see any. I do not see any. There's very few places, I guess, to sneak away from the prying eyes of everybody up there is in government adjacent or
Craig, you all have the inside track as reporters, everyone, consultants, everyone sending you things, right? And wanting to spin or move things in their direction
right.
And influence what you write, how you write it, when you write it. Based on everything you've seen, from different pollsters and different people, and you're getting a lot to digest. Two-man race? Aggregate, come on. You get a lot of information. No, but based on what they're saying.
I understand.
All right, Nick, give me four. Give me four that you're seeing across the board are moving the needle in terms of name, in terms of based on all the stuff that you've been receiving.
I think you have to, the last few polls, I think you have to say it's obviously former Governor Andrew Cuomo. We're going to
That's universal then.
So far, but this is also, again...
Regardless of who's sending it, universal that Governor Cuomo is near the top.
In three polls that I've seen now that he is up near the top. Stringer is up near the top. Lander's kind of floating around there. Adams is still floating around there. But
wow, so again, Stringer and Cuomo are consistently...
But it's...
Based on what you've seen.
But based on what I've seen, and that's not talking about the internal polls that I haven't seen that have been discussed with me. However... It's January. I think we have to keep coming back to it. And again, going back to the thing with going back to what we were talking about with Cuomo is that people know who Cuomo is. They have their minds made up. What it was explained to me the other day by a political operative is how much ground can he really gain? Maybe this is his baseline, and that's it. And that he can't go above it. This is not his baseline, but this is his ceiling. I'm sorry. This is his ceiling, and maybe this is the baseline for everybody else. They still have 3, 4, or 5 months right now to then campaign and get their.
What was the thing with Stringer? What do you think? It's just that he's been around a long time, long political life. What do you attribute that to?
I mean, I think it's name recognition. Right now, again, we have to keep looking back at name recognition. I do think that a lot of people, when we look and talk to New Yorkers and we talk about policies, I think Adams has been hit by the fact that crime jumped under his administration and has been slowly ticking down. There's been gains on shootings and murders. However, a lot of other things. We have felony assaults at a 26-year high, 27-year high, dating back to the 90s. People feel that. That's 30,000 crimes. You're more likely to know somebody that was feloniously assaulted than murdered, just judging by the fact that it happens more often, right? So when we're talking about these things, like he still has to make his pitch to New Yorkers. I mean, Adams hasn't even started his campaign yet. He doesn't even have a campaign website. So we don't really know. He's going to be kicking this off in the next little bit. And I think, as you talked about before, post-Trump inauguration, I think we start seeing the more accurate polls, not more accurate, but I guess more of an understanding of where New Yorkers are, what New Yorkers are feeling.
It'll be interesting because I heard, you hear different things, right? I heard a rumor that there's a potential that because the former governor is the numbers currently, or that number that came out recently from that one poll, that could be nothing, right? Considering all the things we've delineated, that the movement to draft Attorney General Tish James will start in serious if there is a sign that the former governor, like all the party apparatus and establishment, will then galvanize and like sort of, hey, we need you to step in potentially.
Right, that's been the conversation. That was the conversation a few months ago, is trying to, as you said, the organization, the Democratic organization that, listen, Cuomo made a lot of enemies when he was governor. There's a lot of people that would not like to see him back in office. And, I think Tish James would be a formidable person that could challenge him for there, but the question is, does she want that?
Yeah.
And the question is, does she want to give that up to come here and do that? Give up the Attorney General's office at this point? And that's the question. We don't know. And because it's going to be a bruising fight.
Oh, yeah.
Even if, yes, Tish James, everybody, all the pollsters, all the pundits, the business community, all these people are saying, oh, it'd be great. It's kind of, we don't, this is a draining 5 months of campaigning, 3-4 months of campaigning, and it's going to be a lot of hits.
Oh, yeah. It'll be interesting, too, to see when you have an incumbent mayor and you have a former governor, let's say conceivably they're both in a race, where the pylon goes, right? Because, all the pretenders and all the people that want to win in June will all of it pile on, right? Because that's the way it goes. When you're at the top, the head that wears the crown rests uneasy.
I think yes. That's
a potential. I don't know.
I think yes. I think it's a little bit different in this stage because of ranked choice voting. I think people can kind of
form allegiances.
You can form, I mean, like voting in this block, anti this. Like, you can take a shot at the top, but it's also like it does come down to some of the lanes that people are in the left, right, centers of the left. So how we're looking at those things, because obviously, almost everybody that's formally in the race is left of Mayor Adams. So that's why Cuomo is a formidable challenger to him, because they're carving off the same voter blocks, correct? So then you're looking at all the other people. Are they creating an alliance, or is somebody trying to move a little bit to the center? I mean, how was explained to me, when you're going in the primary, you want to get your base, which that would be your left, and then move to the center. Does somebody successfully make that move to the center to then kind of coalesce both sides of those things?
Based on what you've seen and heard and received and policy, I know Controller Lander's plan, it received great reviews. People thought it was substantive. People thought it was something practical. Sometimes people put out plans, you're like, that's not going to happen. Good luck with that. Based on what you've received, what you've seen with the different campaigns, anyone stand out? Any handful of people that you say, hey, the way they're running the campaign, the way they're getting out there,
I think they're just starting
the announcements.
I think that's a little bit.
But based on what you've seen, that's what this is about.
I just more mean like even giving these people the benefit of the doubt here. Like most people haven't rolled out their campaign. We're getting stringers.
What you've seen so far, Craig.
No. So I'm saying that like Lander's really one of the only people that's rolled out his campaign and made a full on.
What do you think of Mamdani? Strong fundraising numbers,
fundraising numbers.
Catchy, clever videos, and right. What are your thoughts on him? Because I've heard from different people that whether he wins or not, separate of that, he's done an impressive job. Getting out there.
I think he's gotten his name out there. I haven't seen polling on his name recognition, but just judging that he's even getting in these polls is telling that he's getting his name out there. I think he's a left candidate, far left candidate, DSA. He's like, so that's like the problem that Lander's having. He's DSA adjacent. I wouldn't say Lander's DSA in this thing, but he surrounds himself with a lot of similar. And there's obviously a big backlash to that, and there's big pushback in the business community, the real estate community, and that's gonna pull them down. I mean, they're it seems like a lot of these people too, like they're bringing in talking points to then move the conversation, which is admirable. That's what a lot of people in races do, is they're putting these forward so that's at least part of the conversation. I don't know if they listen, the flow chart of how this is all happening is so fluid because we're in an unprecedented time with the sitting mayor being under federal indictment, with his former, top advisor being under federal, local indictment, all the people around him, the more than 24 people who have resigned, have been raided, all these things. Like, we're in an unprecedented time with that, with a sitting mayor. And I think a lot of people are in this seeing, like, maybe there's a chance. I mean, de Blasio, there wasn't a chance until everything happened with Anthony Weiner, and then he shot to the top. So it means stranger things have happened. Let's put it that way. I think that even just the dominoes, if you can see everybody lining up who's running for comptroller, who's running for Manhattan Borough President, these things are a conversation that everybody's having of where they can go.
When you talk early and things are so premature, do you think it's smart strategy for Congressmember Richie Torres to be out there right now and laying the groundwork and taking shots at if he's laying groundwork to run for governor? Do you think it's sensible, or do you think it's too early to be even involved in a potential or even thinking about considering something?
Listen, I am not his political advisor by any means, but the governor is being forced to respond to his stuff. So whether or not it's going to work for him, it's working for him now. He's getting his name out there more than he was getting his name out there before. So even if it was just to raise his name recognition, there's going to be a benefit for a politician. And she's responding to him, or at least having to make pivots. I mean, some would argue a lot of the things that have been happening in Albany under Hochul over the last, have been because she's been getting this immense amount of pressure. And it's notable that we have a congressman that's attacking the de facto head of the Democratic Party in the state, and nobody else is really saying anything. So nobody else is telling him, "No, don't do this." So I mean, it's kind of this interesting dynamic that we're watching here from the bleachers of. Again, this is this is an unprecedented situation here where I know Hochul's poll numbers are low, but she did just deliver the House. She paused congestion pricing that took it off of the political, presidential race as becoming a potential issue. She restarted it post-election. She then rolled it out before Donald Trump got in. I mean, she's taking at each step of that, she took a massive political hit. And she that is for the Democratic Party. That was for the party.
And she actually released the money, because one of the criticisms former Governor Cuomo received was that he would raise it but not dole it out, allegedly, right?
Right.
So Governor Hochul actually put the money out there, right? To sort of, for the good of the party.
Right.
And for the good of the majority.
And not having conversations with Richie Torres' team about this, and having no insider knowledge of this, it appears to be in a similar situation as in the Eric Adams primary, is that it's opportunistic. We have a very, very weak governor, and polling-wise, an unpopular governor, I would argue. Maybe not weak here, but just an unpopular governor at this point, and somebody sees an in. And maybe this is for something else he runs for. Who knows? Because, he doesn't have to declare until the end of the year. So he's kind of, and if he runs any other thing, the only thing that will happen is if he does declare he has to run, he has to give up his House seat. So he'd have to have polling that he's going to win.
Craig, what are you working on now?
We are about to have an exclusive poll being published in a matter of minutes.
Good. Can you give us a lead, Eddie?
Similar to what we've been discussing right here, that we are all chasing. I haven't read all the full crosstabs. I just got the top sheet of it. So, that we're running down congestion pricing. We're running down where the money is going. That's obviously something that all New Yorkers should care about. Regardless of how you feel about congestion pricing, we should be asking the MTA where that money is going and why are we not auditing it. I think that's a big thing that politically they are putting their nose up at and acting like that they've managed their money very well for the last few years. And Jana was on WMIC on Friday. At the same time, I think the state comptroller was on and New York One saying they need to be audited, and every audit we've ever found says they need to get their spending under control. And Jana saying, oh, no, we don't. So I think we need to be looking at that. I think that's a very important topic, especially if we're giving them a lot of money. I think, looking at what's next for Eric Adams, and not politically, but when is the Eastern District going to act with Winnie Greco, which is they are looking at, we are told, ties to China, and is that going to implicate the mayor? I've told that It doesn't seem like it does at this point, but we don't know what they have. We still are waiting on a superseding indictment in his SDNY case, which we were told the weeks after that he was indicted that it was coming. We're still waiting on that, and now we're also preparing for his federal trial, which is coming in April.
Greg, you live in Jersey.
I do live in
your
Jersey.
Personal thoughts on congestion pricing, considering your paper has been brutal.
I mean, I have
on all things congestion pricing. What are your personal thoughts? If you can chime in.
No, I mean, I listen. I think in everything in my life, I try to be very objective and look at it from all angles. And that I take the path every day. I take transit all the time. I have a car because in Jersey, there's transit can't get me to my parents' house. It's impossible. But I think as I said, I think the important part of looking at congestion pricing is where the money is going and that it's properly being used. I think if they can make the argument for that, then there's not going to be an issue with congestion pricing. It doesn't seem like there's an issue with unless that money is being misused or their budgets aren't being taken care of or on their projects or anything like that.
Craig, here's the other thing, and we'll wrap here because I know you have other things to tend to. The New York Times decided it is not going to endorse.
Yes.
Right? Everyone, based on reading the political tea leaves and Trump's victory, it's the economy. The economy, meaning Dems. That was a takeaway for Dems. We got to focus on the bread and butter economic issues of the majority, irregardless of party registration.
Right.
People are concerned about being able to pay their bills, raising their children, and what that means. More and time again, for example, with Mayor Adams, everyone looks at your paper to see how they're covering him, whether it's favorable and unfavorable, meaning more than ever now when people are leaning, and you see it with the left, now they're taking real estate money.
Right.
Now everyone's running away from defund, whether they were for it or against.
Right.
Right? It's not cool anymore.
Right.
Or popular or politically sensible.
Right.
Your paper's playing a more and more important role in the outcome because it is deemed as the paper of the working class, old-time New Yorker.
Right.
Right? How does that feel for you, and what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think just letting everybody know if they don't understand how newspapers work, I have nothing to do with the editorial side of our paper. I do not weigh in, and as I think I've really gone to extraordinary lengths here, I do not try to input my opinion into anything. Even when I'm talking about politics of these things, these are statements based on conversations I've had with the experts in the field and seeing what I've seen with these polling, the opinions of these things. Now, when it comes to coverage, it's what every journalist wants to do and has to do or should take on this immense responsibility is that we have to understand that how we cover, what we cover, how much we cover is a representation of it is showing the public, it is giving that person is lifting them up as a candidate or what have you or whatever that position they are. And I think it's an immense responsibility for those things. And I think I had this conversation last night with my editor about talking about how we're covering the primaries. And I think I want to keep that in the back of my mind on everything and every story we're doing.
Craig, predictions. Give me 3 predictions for the new year.
3 predictions for the new year. We will have... I have to be completely honest, and this is going to be a cop-out. I can't even think about what I'm going to have for dinner tonight, let alone predict what I'm going to be doing next week or what this city is going to be doing that. So I don't think I am in the proper mind space to do that.
You made one prediction where you said former Governor Cuomo runs for mayor.
Former governor, I said it's more likely than not at this point. All signals at this point are pointing to he is running.
Big winner 2024. Who do you think was the biggest winner? Politically, don't Trump. No Trump.
The biggest winner in 2024. Wow. I would say probably aside from the presidential would be Hakeem Jeffries. He got the House back. He managed to work with Hochul on congestion pricing, with getting the House members and flipping a bunch of seats.
Biggest loser.
Well, I mean, we're going to have to go back to the historic federal indictment for Eric Adams. I mean, I can't, and nothing can top that in that sense because of, regardless if he gets, he is not guilty, the indictment is historic. There's been no sitting mayor that's ever been indicted in New York City.
Last two questions. Best day on the job for you?
Best day on the job? Too many good stories to even...
Give me one. Give me one anecdote.
One anecdote of the best day on the job. I will say one of my favorite, and I'm going to take a line from Katie Honan here, one of my favorite stories I've ever done in my career was when I was the Deputy Police Bureau Chief. And it was during all the George Floyd protests, and there was a lot of anti-cop sentiment, and the cops were feeling it, rightfully so. There was a lot of things going on back and forth. Pendulum, obviously, you were talking about before, had flown far to the left. And there was also equal reaction from people on the right. And there was this overzealous sergeant after 3 cops went to Shake Shack and claimed that they were poisoned. The sergeant made them go to the hospital. And I remember seeing the tweet. It was like 11 o'clock at night. This was all happening. And I texted somebody, one of my reporters, one of the reporters I work with, saying, like, we have to look into this. And then a week later, we uncovered and figured out that it was a mobile order. They didn't know there were cops. There was nothing like that. And it was just this whole Shake Shack dilemma. But the funniest part of it, and my favorite part of this, and as Katie Honan has pointed out, is they even had these, the little cones, like where they have bullet casings with the shake. My photographer just nailed it. I mean, it had nothing to do with me. The photographer who got that photo was just like chef's kiss.
Worst day on the job?
Worst day on the job? Worst day on the job? I don't know. You try to forget all the error. You try not to forget any errors you make so you can learn from them. So I don't ever consider making an error like the worst thing possible, because you should always learn from all those things. I think, the worst days on the job are the ones, where you're dealing with, I don't have any specific ones. I hate to say, like, it sounds really, really naive, but I don't even know
right.
that's the right word.
It's your stage. Last question. Someone who covered PD, understanding how important crime, public safety is in the public discourse and dialogue, and how important and consequential it'll be in the mayoral race, in the governor's race. Grade new police commissioner Jesse Tisch thus far.
I mean, listen, I can't, this is hard without really having any opinions here. I think you have to look at what she's done. I mean, she just dropped today. They're changing the chases, the policy on police chases. The city had some really good reporting on how this was causing, a lot of injuries or, threatening situations. I think, she's cracking down on overtime. She's, it seems to be, from what I'm seeing from the outside here, like rooting out some, the whole thing came out with Epps under, Chief of Department Jeff Madry. Obviously, these are all allegations at this point, but, there's clearly overtime issues, right? There was clearly something happening with the overtime, regardless of what the situation behind that is. So, I mean, it seems like she's, from my understanding of coming up, and when I got here, it was James O'Neill, then it was followed by Dermot Shea. That administration seems to be shifting back to that. I mean, I know Tisch was very close with Bratton, and he's been weighing in. He weighed in the overtime, and then following that, she's cracking down on the overtime. So it does seem like there is a return to the de Blasio era of the NYPD, and so. Under that, I mean, we have to say, before COVID, the NYPD, the crime was at historic lows.
Yeah. Craig, thank you for being here. Appreciate you taking the time. Anything you want to add? Anything you want to say that I forgot to mention?
No, I just want to, thanks for having me. And, I hope
you'll be back, hopefully. You'll be back.
Read my paper.
You will be back soon, hopefully, to talk about the, latest hits and what's happening throughout the city. Thank you so much, Craig. All the best to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right.